As I mentioned, rounding a number means making a new, less precise version of it. In that new number, any digits that are in number places smaller than the target will automatically get replaced with zeros. And in most cases, any digits that are in number places larger than the target will automatically be kept the same in the new rounded version. There are some exceptions, as we'll see later in this video. So that seems pretty simple. All the bigger digits you keep, and all the smaller digits you zero. But what about that target digit itself? What do we do with that? Well, we're going to do one of two things. We're either going to keep that digit the same, or we're going to increase it by 1. If we keep that target digit the same, that's called rounding down, which might seem strange at first. I mean, how can leaving the digit the same be rounding down? But remember, we're going to automatically replace all of the smaller places with 0. And doing that makes a rounded number smaller, even if the target digit stays the same. On the other hand, increasing the target digit by 1 is called rounding up, since the new rounded number will be larger than the original number. Alright, but how do we decide which to do? How do we know if we keep the target digit the same or increase it by 1? The key is to look at the digit in the next smaller number place, the digit that's just to the right of the target digit. If that digit is less than 5, in other words, if it's a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, then we'll leave the target digit the same in the rounded version. But if the digit is a 5 or greater, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, then we'll increase the target digit by 1. Okay, so now that you know the basic procedure for rounding numbers, let's try a few specific examples. Here's the first one. Round 24,623 to the nearest hundred. Since we need to round to the nearest hundred, we first need to identify the digit in the hundreds place. That digit is a 6, so that's our target. And we know that any digits to the right of the target will be replaced with zeros in our rounded version. Next, let's decide what to do with the target digit. We either keep it the same or we increase it by 1. To decide, we look at the value of the next digit to the right. Since that digit is only a 2, which is less than 5, we round down, which means that we'll keep the target digit the same in the rounded number. Last, we just keep all the digits in bigger number places the same in the rounded version. There, we've rounded the original number to the nearest hundred, and the answer is 24,600. Let's try another problem. This one has some decimal digits, 32.725, and we're asked to round it to the nearest whole number. That means our target digit is in the ones place. We need to round it to the nearest 1. So any digits to the right of the ones place will just be replaced with zeros in the rounded version. Now, to decide what to do with the target digit, we look at the next digit to the right. Since that digit is a 7, we'll round up this time. That means we'll increase our target digit by 1. And finally, we keep any digits to the left of the target digit the same. In this case, that's just the 3. So we've rounded this number off to 33.000, or just 33, since we don't really need those extra zeros after the decimal point. Ready for one more? Let's round 65.7991 to the nearest hundredth. The first step is to identify the hundredths place as our target. That place contains the digit 9. All the digits in smaller number places will just be replaced with 0 in the rounded version. Next, we need to decide if we leave the target digit the same or increase it by 1. So we look at the digit to the right of the target. It's a 9 also, so we'll definitely be rounding up. But since the target digit is already a 9, raising it by 1 is a little more complicated. When you add 1 to a digit that's already 9, you need to change it to 0 and increase the digit in the next bigger number place by 1. So that means that our target digit will become 0, and we need to increase the digit in the next bigger number place. That digit is a 7, so we'll increase it to an 8. The rest of the digits in the original number will be kept the same in the rounded version. So our rounded version will be 65.80. As you can see, in some cases, rounding can actually change the digits to the left of the target digit also. It's sort of a domino effect that can happen when rounding numbers. If you have a lot of 9s, rounding can bump them all up like a chain reaction. Like, what if you need to round 1,999,999 to the nearest 10? The 9 in the ones place tells us that we need to round our target digit up by 1, but it's already a 9, so we need to 0 it and increase the next number place. But that's already a 9, so we need to 0 it and increase the next number place. But that's already a 9, and so the pattern continues until we end up with 2 million as our final rounded number. So sometimes rounding a number is pretty simple, and other times it's a little more involved. The key is to remember the rule that if the digit to the right of the target is less than 5, we leave the target digit the same. But if it's 5 or more, we increase the target digit by 1, even if that causes a chain reaction with the bigger number places. Alright, so now you know a lot about rounding numbers. You know why we round numbers, and you've seen the basic procedure in action. But just watching a video about rounding isn't enough to get really good at it. The only way to do that is to practice. So be sure to try rounding some numbers on your own. In fact, rounding is such an important math skill that you should probably practice it a lot until you've really got it mastered. As always, thanks for watching Math Antics, and I'll see you next time.
Learn more at mathantics.com.
Hi, I'm Rob. Welcome to... You learned that our base 10 number system uses 10 different digits to express any number. But we didn't just use those digits randomly. We used them in a specific order for counting. We started with 0, which represents the idea of having nothing, and then the next digit we used, and finally 9, which is the last of our 10 digits. Do you see how this pattern formed by the apples increases as it goes from left to right, like going upstairs, and decreases as it goes from right to left, like going downstairs. Well, that's how the number line works. It consists of a long horizontal line with an arrow at the end, which I'll explain in a minute. For each digit, there's a tiny vertical mark showing where that amount belongs on the line. This particular version of the number line shows how the digits 0 through 9 relate to each other. It's set up so that as you go from left to right, each new number is bigger or greater than the number just before it. And as you go from right to left, each number is smaller or less than the number just before it. And do you notice that all the marks are the same distance apart? That's because each of these numbers differs from its immediate neighbors by the same amount. They're all 1 apart. Starting from 0, moving right to the first mark is an increase of 1. Likewise, moving from 1 to the next mark 2 is also an increase of 1. In other words, you just add 1 to get to the next number. And even though our current number line stops at 9, we could continue the process of adding 1 to make it longer if we wanted to. For example, 9 plus 1 equals 10, 10 plus 1 equals 11, 11 plus 1 equals 12, and so on. In fact, technically the number line goes on forever because there is no biggest number. Whatever number you decide to stop at, you could always just add 1 more to make the line longer. And that's what the arrow on the right side is for. It tells you that the numbers keep on going forever, even though we could never write them all down. You'll probably see many different versions of the number line as you learn math. Some may stop at different numbers, and some might not even start at 0, like this one that starts at 7 and stops at 15. One way to think about these different number lines is that they're all snapshots of the ultimate ideal number line that has every number on it. It's kind of like trying to take a picture of something really big, like an elephant. If you're too close, you'll only be able to fit a small part of it in each snapshot. Of course, if you back up far enough, you could fit the whole elephant in the shot. But the number line is infinitely big. No matter how far you zoom out, you can never fit it all in a single image or drawing. So you only draw the part of it that you need for whatever problem you're working on. For example, instead of a number line that stops at 10, maybe we need one that goes all the way to 20. That wouldn't be too hard to draw. But what if we needed to go all the way to 100? Would we need to draw a number line that shows all the numbers from 0 to 100? Fortunately, no. We actually have 2 different options that are much easier. The first option would work for situations where we only need to use a portion of the number line that's near 100. In that case, instead of starting our number line at 0, we could have it start at a bigger number, like 95, and increase by 1 until we get to 105 or so. All the marks are still 1 apart like the other number lines we've seen. We're just starting and stopping at different values. Notice that we have arrows on both sides now to show that the line keeps on going in either direction. The second option would work for situations where we need to use the entire range from 0 to 100. In that case, we could simply leave out most of the digit marks on the number line and just show a mark for each multiple of 10, like 10, 20, 30, 40, and so on. Let's compare that number line to the one we previously saw that went from 0 to 10. Even though these two number lines look the same size on the screen, the bottom one is actually 10 times longer. If we resize them so that they use the same scale, lining up the zeros and the tens, you can see that most of the number line, going from 0 to 10, fits in between the first two marks on the longer number line. And that helps you realize a very important idea. Just because a number line has marks showing specific numbers doesn't mean that there's nothing in between them. There's actually a lot in between them, as you'll see in a minute. In this example, the space between the 0 and the 10 on the longer number line still contains all the counting numbers 1 through 9. But for simplicity, we left them out. But it's important to remember that they're still there, in case you need to use those in-between values. Like if someone asks you to put a point on the number line where 65 is located, you would put it halfway between the 60 and the 70. That's where 65 is, even though its mark isn't shown. Okay, but let's zoom back in on the number line that goes from 0 to 10. You may be wondering, are there any numbers in between these basic whole numbers? There sure are. In the video about decimal place value, we learned that special numbers called fractions are used to represent amounts that are less than 1, like 1/2 of an apple or 1/10 of an apple. Well, we can divide up the sections of the number line that are between the whole numbers to show exactly